Okay.
One thing I've just noticed, Pablo's toes have gone quite long, which I've never seen him have that shape hoof before. Is that, and the vet did think he was a little bit laminitic. Is that kind of a sign that they can be laminitic if their toes grow long, or is that
Not
how he's moving a
necess
bit differently?
it could be as he's relaxing. Like we had this discussion about how when their neck is short, there's more weight
Mm,
on the forehand. But when the
yes.
neck is long, there's still too much weight on the forehand. And
Yeah.
long toes are generally a farrier issue because
Okay, that's
the way the hoof grows on all horses, hooves, like the hooves don't grow straight down.
no.
When a hoof grows, it grows down and forward. And
Yeah.
so it's really common, like in Florida, it's very common for farriers to say, I can't take the toe back anymore without going into the white line. But,
Right.
and so what happens is if the farrier isn't taking the toe back with every trim, then
Yeah.
the toe gets longer and longer and longer, and the heels get pulled forward.
Mm,
And when that happens, the hoof quits growing as much because when the hoof is under
yeah.
stress, it slows down the hoof growth. And so
Yeah,
then it
okay.
becomes a really compounded problem because there's not like the way you take the heels back is the farrier has to sort of take the toe back. And when you trim the bottom of the hoof, that's what pulls the heel back because
Yeah, okay.
the hoof grows forward and down, and so every time the hoof grows, it pulls the heels forward. And
Yeah.
so
All right, that makes sense.
if you don't take enough hoof off the bottom, it doesn't pull the heels back. And if you keep
Mm.
leaving the toe too long, there's like a gradual forward direction of the hoof growth.
Yeah. So this he's still under the farrier from the vets
Hmm.
and having front shoes on. And last time, so he's due next week. I'll take him down, which will be 5 weeks. Um, Last time he was done, I thought the farrier cut his toes quite short, like they looked quite
Hmm.
chopped off,
Yep,
which looked good.
that's what
But
he should
then,
do.
yeah, but then within 4 weeks, it seems that Pablo's they just look longer than they've ever looked. Thought, what's going on here? Don't know.
Well,
Anyway,
it
just
might be if he's more comfortable, what you might have going on is just more hoof growth than normal. Because
okay.
when they have thin soles, when he was barefoot and he was tender and he had thin soles, the hoof shuts down. Like when the feet
Mm,
get uncomfortable, the hoof growth slows way down and they just don't grow a lot of
okay.
hoof. And
Yeah.
once the hooves are comfortable and they're using them better, the rate of growth actually increases a little bit. So it could be what you're seeing is at 4 weeks where he would normally still look okay, he's got more foot, so he's got more toe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that
Does,
could be the case, couldn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yep.
if he's really lopping the toe back and trimming the bottom, because once the hoof shuts down, you can't trim very much off the bottom and you can't take very much toe back. So it becomes a real
Mm,
problem. You have to have a farrier who, and that's why the shoes are helpful because you can take enough
yeah.
off the bottom to pull the heels back and you can be more
Yeah.
aggressive with the toes and not make them uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got stitches trim as well next week by the trimmer that I use.
Hmm.
And last time I just told her not to take the sole off from the
Hmm.
vet's advice. Because remember, she trimmed the sole out last time and we were a
Yep.
bit concerned because he's so laminitic.
Yes.
This time, shall I ask her again to just do the toe? Or I've looked at his underneath his hoof and it looks, how it doesn't look like Pablo's anyway. It's quite lumpy and it looks a bit of a mess. I'm kind of wondering,
Yes.
should she take some of the sole off to flatten it out a bit?
Is he still on? medication for laminitis?
No, so I finished the laminitis medication. So I've now started him on the medication for Cushing's because the vet at the time gave me two lots.
Right.
Sorry, for both for Cushing's and laminitis. And I started him on both and he wasn't doing very well. So the vet said there's not enough evidence on how they interact with each other. So just do the laminitic one or the laminitis one first.
Great.
And then once that's finished, then go on the Cushing's. So we're now on the Cushing's. We've been doing that for about a week.
Okay, then not
And
yet.
he's
Yeah.
no,
Because yeah, with Cushing's and laminitis, both are metabolic issues. And so with
yeah,
Cushing's, they're prone to laminitis because of the Cushing's. So
yeah,
you've got the laminitis under control, but you don't want any mechanical compromises to the hoof until he's on the Cushing's medication, I would say at least 3 months.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah. He
so
seems to be going better on it this week. Like initially. He wasn't eating, he was just looking awful.
it's an appetite
So
suppressant. Yeah.
yeah, but this
Mhm.
time, touch wood, he's just been quite normal.
Yeah, they
So
get used to it, and sometimes they'll give the Cushing's medication with while they're treating the laminitis because horses won't eat when you first give them the Cushing's meds.
mm,
Because it's an appetite suppressant. And then once they get used to it, they're usually fine, but they can become a little
mm.
bit of a picky eater where they're just
Yeah,
sensitive to any changes in the diet.
I
Um,
might take some.
yeah, and so it's if he's now a bit out of the woods with the laminitis, and how's his soundness? Is he?
So he's still in the boots and he
Hmm.
seems to be walking around quite okay in the boots, but not great with the boots off. So
Okay,
he's still sore.
so then definitely don't touch the soles. Just
Okay,
don't touch them. Don't touch the bottom of
okay,
the foot. If he's barefoot,
okay. Just,
yeah.
yeah.
Other
All right,
than
so just the toes.
so if you pick up the hoof and the heel is sort of pulled forward, she can
Yep,
trim she can trim the hoof wall only,
yep,
but no
yep.
scraping of the sole and the bars or anything like that.
Okay.
Does that make
Yeah, all right.
sense?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, I'll
Um,
let her know.
yeah, because taking off the hoof wall is part of what pulls the toe back.
Yes.
And
Yep, okay.
then also rasping the toe down from the top of the hoof. But no,
Yep.
if he's not sound without the boots, then you don't want her to touch the bars or the
The sole.
sole yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm gonna write that down. No bars, no sole.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, just leave him alone.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that even if you get too much bar or too much sole, it never is painful for a horse.
Okay.
Eventually,
Yep.
you gotta take it out because it's like your fingernails getting too long, right? It gets awkward. But
Yep.
you can't, it's not painful to have your fingernails too long, but it's very painful if your fingernails are too short, right? So if
Yep.
your fingernail gets ripped below the bed, that's painful. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's
Yep.
kind of the soles and the bar. You can have too much, and he might walk a little
Feel
differently with
weird.
too much, but
Yep.
it's
Yep.
never going to be painful.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah. So
Yep.
he's only going to get more sound if he has too much growth in the bars and the soles.
Mm.
He's only going to get comfortable without the boots, and then you can start taking some out.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. Good
Mhm.
questions. Like it's just such an education that when we go through laminitis or discover our horse
Oh,
has metabolic issues, it's a massive
yeah.
education for every horse owner.
Mm. Mm.
And we just
Part of my journey, obviously, isn't it?
well, and it's one of those things that even if we're wrong, until the horse is like physically can't move, when you start to have issues with the feet or the back and they just can't move comfortably, all the theories go out the window and you go, okay, what's going to work for this horse? And that's
Mm,
where you really start to learn and you start to sort the wheat from the chaff of information.
mm,
You know what I
hmm.
mean? Because your horse is
Yeah,
right there in an extreme situation, showing you this is helping me feel better. This is making me worse.
yeah, yeah.
And until the horses get to that point, sometimes we just sort of go, "Oh, I trust this person," or "This is a great
Mm,
theory. I believe in the theory." And sometimes it's
mm.
not the wrong theory, it's just the application for that particular horse at that
Yeah,
particular time. It's
yeah,
just not
yeah.
going
They're
to
all very
work.
individual, aren't they? Mm,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Speaking of, let's look at, let me share the screen.
yeah. So this is not our finest hour, as you'll see, but
Oh, good. I love not the finest hour. It always makes for a more interesting lesson when things go a bit wonky.
oh, not
Okay.
that anything dramatic happened. He's just going like snail's pace. Um, and then something was happening down the road at one stage and he turns into a big giraffe. But
Oh,
other than
good,
that,
because I never, you always talk about that, but I never see it in the training videos. You tell me he can get quite
mm.
wound up, but it never shows up when you're
And not
work.
that he was doing anything. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't snorting or kind of running away. He just, yeah, was looking.
So I
Oh,
like
why
that you
hasn't the
have, I like
camera
that you
followed him
have
around the corner?
the bareback pad on him.
Mhm.
Or
Oh,
you,
something I have started doing.
mhm.
So he's got a real negative association with girthing. I don't know whether it's how I've done it in the past, told him off for doing stuff, I don't know, or whether he has an issue why he didn't like it. I don't know. Anyway, he's very snarky, pins his ears, like really not happy.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is the best option I've chosen, but I just thought I'll trial. When I put, so far I only do the bareback pad up 2 notches, so it's not even really tight, right? But even the minute you put the slight little bit of pressure on him, he pins his ears and it's not liking it. So I now, I do one up and say good boy, and then I do the next one up, and then he gets a little bit of licorice, and
Yeah,
he now actually, um, just desperate. So, but now he actually, he's not pissy. He's just waiting for his bit of licorice. I mean, what I'll
excellent.
have to be careful of, obviously, is that he doesn't then turn that into crocodile looking for the licorice. Is probably the next thing will go down. But
No,
yeah, I'm just trying to.
they typically don't. Like people get kind of funny about treats, but that's the your intuition is spot on because that's the exact place when you have a memory and a habit that even though you're not making the girth tight, he's having a negative reaction and negative anticipation about the girth, right? And
Yes, yep.
so when you take something like negative anticipation and you offer a treat at the same time, the nervous system gets confused and
Mm.
he can't
And he
quite.
looks confused. He's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. So like horses that sometimes turn around and bite when you girth up,
Hmm.
they'll turn to bite and I'll stuff a treat in their mouth. And
Mm.
it confuses them. They don't know what to do.
Mm.
And
Yeah, yeah.
and it doesn't usually turn into aggression because the aggression's already there. It
Yeah,
and so I
exactly.
go when you actually use a treat as a tool of confusion, which it can be,
Hmm.
because you're giving them,
Mm.
you're asking them to do something that normally they hate and it makes them aggressive, but you're
Hmm.
suddenly surprising them with treats, or you're rewarding any effort, or you're rewarding any change, or you're just confusing their brain. They get something they
Yeah.
like with something they don't like, and then they don't know what to
Hmm.
think.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's a good strategy.
Yeah. So hopefully it will work.
Yeah, because
If
usually when you take a horse that's aggressive, but you confuse them with a treat, they forget to be aggressive and they just relax.
Yeah, yeah. And what I'm mindful of is when I give him the treat, I wait for him just to calm down a bit. So when
Yes.
he kind of looks around all quite excited about what's coming, we just wait and then he puts his head down, then he gets it.
Yes,
So
because if you do give treats, well, there's a different way to work with treats with anxiety. But
mm,
anxiety, if you keep giving treats during anxiety, it can make them aggressive.
yes. Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah. But with anxious, like with what you're doing with him when they're on the snarky side, you're just confusing them and they usually get calm. But it's good that you're waiting if he has a little bit of anxiety and say, no, you need to bring it down a notch before you get your treat. Because,
Yeah.
like, I had a horse that if you fed him a treat, he went into anxiety from the treat. And so the only thing I could do with him was stuff him with so many treats that he could finally relax. After treat number 25, he would start
Yeah.
to reduce the anxiety.
Yeah.
But Pablo is slow, but like just there where he's halted, his hind legs are nice and wide
Mm.
and it's he's pausing a lot more, but he looks, if you look at the top of his hindquarter as he's going away from the camera, he's rounded out a bit. So he's put some muscle on, which is quite nice. And if you look at the top of
Mm.
the hindquarter, it barely looks like he's moving as he's coming around the turn. It's not doing this. It's not high on one side, low on the other. The
Yeah.
the top of the hindquarter, and in order for him to stabilize the pelvis as much as he is, I think the slowness is not where he used to stop because he was uncomfortable with his ears half back like that. It's
Yeah.
it's more like he's thinking. He's
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
like he's trying to figure it out because he's more comfortable in a way and he's starting to get his hind legs more underneath him. They're not bending yet. So there's a little, you won't get the forwardness until you start to see the hocks bend a little more. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? So
Yeah. Yeah.
the pelvis is level, and we'll wait till he comes back in frame. The stifle joint is starting to work. You can see a little movement. Like the pelvis should be, the pelvic bones, which is the top of the hindquarters, should not move and should not be doing this. And
Yeah.
then when that gets steady, you'll see movement through the hip joint, the stifle joint, then the hock joint, and usually the fetlock, if it's been over flexing, will reduce the flexion. All of his hind leg joints don't really bend. So that's what gives you the stiff appearance.
Hmm.
But if
Yep.
you know where the stifle is, right?
In the kind of a little bit forward from where your cursor was.
Yeah, it's just at the very top
Yeah.
of the hind leg, just behind the barrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has more movement. So the top of the hindquarters, as you watch him go around, nice and level without a lot of movement. And as he passes, once he starts moving again, we'll look at the inside. But right about where the long rein is hitting the top of the leg, that's where the stifle
Hmm.
joint is.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And so that you can sort of see has a little bit of forward and back move. Oh, this is his distracted moment.
There was some crazy woman down the road screaming into a car. I do not know what's going on. I'm
Oh,
thinking, what's
he's
happening?
like,
Crazy
everything,
neighbors.
everything okay over there? He's not reacting though. He's just looking.
No, just looking. Just looking.
He's got to make sure everything's okay. So, where if you look, because remember when you thought he looks lame on all four legs?
Hmm.
So that was the
Yep.
beginning of the hind legs when we're working with the spine or the axial skeleton. when you were driving him from behind, you're trying to just stabilize the midline. So you're just trying to get the spine stable. Then, as he started lengthening his neck, finding more forward, liking the work, that tells you we've got that part sort of improved. But
Hmm.
where he was lengthening and falling and then getting distracted and his legs looked like all wonky, that's a lack
Yep.
of stability through the pelvis. So first you stabilize the spine. Now we're
Yep.
stabilizing the pelvis, and that's where long reins on turns and circles really helps to stabilize the pelvis. But anything you do on the long reins from the inside position, like when you're behind him, it targets the spine. And when you're working from the
Yes.
inside of the horse on the long reins, it's more targeting the pelvis, at least the lateral
Yep.
stability of the pelvis. And we'll look at him once
Yep.
he gets going again here. But um, if he does that, you can always pull him off to one side with your inside rein and see if that gets his mind back in the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
We just
So,
stand there looking for a while.
okay. Which, as long as they're not reacting, it's like no harm, no
Yeah.
foul. But
Yep.
but if you want him back in the game, instead of tapping him with the long rein, I would shorten your right rein and pull his head to the right like a tight right turn and
Yep.
just get his mind off of whatever he's looking at.
Yep.
But so once he gets moving again, where we're probably going to see movement starting to come through, it's like if the pelvis is unstable, then the hip, the knee, or the hip, the stifle, and the hock have to stabilize the body. So that's what reduces that full range of motion between flexion and extension. And that's what makes the legs look really stiff because they don't bend,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So as you're changing coordination, we can't get the legs to flex and extend through the hip, stifle, and hock unless the pelvis is stable. Like it's one
Yep.
or the other. You can't have unstable pelvis and movable leg joints. It just the body
Yes.
doesn't work that way. So the
Yep.
more
Yep.
stable, and that's what I'm seeing in his movement, and it's also why he slowed down again. And he's not
Hmm.
stopping, even though he's stopping frequently. Number one, it's not hard to get him going again. He's not shutting down. And
Yep.
two, he's very thoughtful, like the ears are half back, like he's sort of thinking his way through this deal, especially with the right hind on the inside. So
Hmm.
slow and steady would tell you the hind leg joints are starting to do their job again. Does that make sense? So just like
Yep.
when
Yep.
his pelvis was unstable, he stopped and it was hard. He stopped a lot and it was hard to get him to go forward. Now where
Yep.
he's at is he's stopping as he's restoring the mobility to the leg joints. It's a different issue, but it's kind of having the same effect. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so
Yep.
the next layer, as long as you're working from the inside, the pelvis is going to still get more stable and more engaged. And that's
Yep.
going to allow more movement through the hip joint, the stifle joint, and the hock joint will be the last place you see it. And so now when he's moving, the top of his hindquarters is very stable, very level. You can see with the placement of the hind legs. So the stifle joint is just at the back of the barrel, top of the hind leg. And if the hip and stifle joint are both more mobile and not doing the job of stabilizing, then you start to see the hind leg come closer to the middle as it strides forward. It's still going to look
Yep.
stiff, but it's going to come
Yep.
more forward.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that he takes larger steps with his back legs now.
Yeah,
And in fact, not this time, but the time before, I actually put the front hoof boots on because he was just about overreaching and stepping on his feet. So I probably should put some
yeah.
boots on.
And so what will
Mm.
happen, because that's the beginning of the hip and the stifle flexing enough that it's
Hmm.
moving the leg forward, right?
Yeah,
It's a little awkward and stiff looking because the hock joint still isn't really moving yet. It's a little bit stuck in
yeah,
extension.
yeah.
And so that's going to start moving, and he'll, when the hind leg joints start really functioning again, number one, they offer more forward. They quit stopping, right? And
Hmm.
the stopping just tells you it's either tricky for him or maybe a little uncomfortable as the joints are
Hmm.
restoring function.
Yeah,
But they quit stopping and the movement gets more fluid. Like not just rhythmic, but there starts to be a little bit of like ease of motion, and sometimes they'll offer more energy. Sometimes it's still slow, but it looks smoother. It doesn't look,
yeah,
because what the joints do is they act like shock absorbers, right? So when the
yeah,
joints are
yeah,
stabilizing the body, it looks really stiff. And when the pelvis and spine are stable, once you get the range of motion back into the joints, you see, and if you're riding him, you feel the smoothness of the motion because the joints are flexing and extending equally.
yeah,
And he's starting to do that through the hip and the stifle, but it's probably uncomfortable enough for him. It's like I call it knocking the rust off. But if there's
yeah,
any arthritis in there, he's working through the arthritis. And that's why I like the Previcox and the joint supplements. It just eases this change in restoring the function of the joints.
yeah.
But his hocks aren't moving much yet.
Mm.
So I like that he's staying forward as he lengthens the neck. He's not stopping, he's not getting distracted, and he's just staying forward. It's very slow, which is normal
Hmm.
for during
Hmm.
rehab. But
Yeah,
when he was a little too loose and needed more support, you could kind of see him lengthen the neck and then he'd get distracted by something and stop because he didn't feel stable. When they
yeah,
stop because they're uncomfortable or they're really unstable through the spine and pelvis, you can barely get them to move again. And that's where you started with
yeah,
him. Does that make
yeah,
sense? And so
yeah,
these are all evolutions of his coordination changing. But ultimately, when all the coordination starts to kind of come together, he will quit stopping and he will offer you
hmm.
more and more forward. Those are kind of the signs you're looking for. And it's really a bit of a slog.
That will be lovely.
Yeah, and it's, I
Yeah.
mean, it really is a slog until the body starts to get back to where it should be. And there's just no
Hmm.
way around it. It's like, it's tedious. It takes a lot of practice and repetition, but you're
Yeah,
doing a fantastic job. And he's moving along as slow as it looks. He's moving along at a pretty good pace of recovery.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so there's
And
nothing I see that tells me it's too painful or uncomfortable for him to work through the challenging parts.
yeah, yeah. This direction's very interesting. He kind of walks like a crab. It's like he puts his back legs straight
Hmm.
and then his front legs on
Yeah.
the angle or his neck on the angle. Yeah, it's very odd.
Yeah, and it would, so like if you think of it, all horses have the same anatomy, right? So the ideal coordination of the anatomy is the same for all horses. What's
Hmm.
wildly different and so fascinating, it's just completely unpredictable, is how horses figure out dysfunctional coordination. So they have to get the job done because we put pressure on them, but how they coordinate their body in order to do that, it's like so complicated and so unique. You can't even pretend you would know how a horse has
Yeah.
figured that out. And so this direction, as he's unwinding, whenever I get really odd movement, I go, hmm, as long as are calm, they're focused, and they want to move forward more easily, we're on the
Yeah.
right track. And
Yeah.
the way the dysfunctional coordination unwinds never ceases to amaze me what horses want to do to find comfort. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very unique, and that's where I had to start getting over, oh, the horse is bent to the outside or is moving sideways or it looks wrong. It doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like. And I had to let all of that go and just go, I do know all bodies will seek comfort. So when you give resistance to the through the reins to help him stabilize the weight left to right, that's all you're doing. You're saying between your right set of legs and your left set of legs, try to keep that body weight equal. That's what the long reins are doing. And more intensely when you're working from the inside. And in order to do that, it's like they go through the weirdest configurations
Mm.
in the
Yeah, he looks very odd.
yeah, in the unwinding process, they're trying to find comfort with the weight equal left to right because that's not been his habit. His weight was
Yeah.
His body has organized around unequal weight distribution left to right and
Mm.
too much weight forward as well. And
Yeah.
so, as you're guiding him just to stabilize the weight left to right, but now you're also saying on a turn, then he has to
Mm.
go, oh, okay, I have to keep my weight more equal front to back and left to right. How do I get comfortable doing that? And that's
Yeah.
where they're basically exploring their coordination until they figure it out. And they don't
Mm.
go
That's what it
from,
feels like, actually.
yeah,
That's what it feels like. He's exploring it. Yeah.
yeah. And that's why, like, when he stops and the ears are half back, it's kind of like they're considering things or they're
Mm.
learning through trial and error. And
Yeah.
sometimes it does get uncomfortable, that process of changing coordination. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. But
Hmm.
but what you'll see is no matter how weird it looks, I go,
Hmm.
there's no wrong way for the body to
Mm.
change coordination. And I go, the horse usually knows better than the human what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable, how much they can do right now and how much they can't do. And so
Yeah.
when we keep the work simple and kind of allow that process of exploration without judging it, they just
Hmm.
it's like they go through it, and then when the coordination changes, they look good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so you're really on the path. And I think to the left, what's probably going on for him, the reason it's more wonky is because typically if they have a right hind issue, which he did with his right hind and with the fracture
Yeah.
in the foot,
Yeah.
it's like when he tracks left in the past, he could just kind of forget about the right hind because it's on the
Yeah.
outside and he could just put all his weight in the direction of travel. And when his neck is to the outside, when you're going to the left, two things are happening. One, you're containing the right hind. So it's helping the
Hmm.
right hind stay engaged even though it's on the outside. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep.
And you're disallowing because every time he puts slack on the inside rein going left, that is his body weight falling forward and
Mm.
left. So when
Yep.
you pull the outside rein, you're helping him shift his weight back to both the right front and the right hind. And
Yep.
so then he goes, I don't know how to walk like that. So he goes sideways, he stops, he has to figure it out because he goes, I don't, that's unfamiliar to me. I don't know what to do.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's why the patience comes into it and the time and repetition, because you can't really force him into balance. You can just keep making his imbalances harder for him to keep doing and more uncomfortable. But
Yep.
but he's got to go through that process of, well, what do I do?
Yep.
And so crab walking, the neck to the outside, the stopping more frequently, all of that is the process of him figuring out what to do with the
Hmm.
resistance you're giving him through the long reins.
Yep.
And he's doing pretty good. Like the fact that Pablo can even walk around a circle is huge progress.
Yeah, exactly. I need to keep
Huge.
reminding myself that because remember he couldn't even walk in a straight line. So
Yeah, and I
we,
love with the amount of time it's going to take for his coordination to change in your long rein work. I love, love, love that you're dealing with the girthing, you're dealing with maybe the bridling or the grooming and
mm,
brushing or his hoof issues or his health. Like all of those
yeah.
are big parts of it. And I go,
Mm,
okay, this is the repetitive slog that his body needs is the long rein work, but you're kind of
yep.
tackling a whole lot of other side effects at the same time.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and what you'll find is even before his movement looks good on the long reins, that his attitude about everything else is going to be more and more cooperative, less
Yeah.
and
When we've
less.
finished the sessions, he is like a little puppy.
Yeah,
He's in such a nice mood, so chilled out, and he just kind of goes into a bit of a zone. I don't know whether he's processing what we've just done or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's interesting. He'll just like I'll put him in his yard before dinner, and he just kind of stands there and like drops his head a little bit, and yeah,
yeah,
goes in a bit of a zone.
yes. That's it's actually his whole nervous system is adapting to the changes of coordination.
Mm.
And it's really fatiguing. It's and also
Yeah, he
using
looks tired.
using
Mm.
core muscles like this is way more fatiguing hard work than what it looks like.
Yeah,
Like,
I can actually see sometimes there's a muscle on, I presume it's his core muscle, on the bottom of his belly, and I can see that tighten up sometimes as he's kind of going around the corner.
hmm
So he's engaging his core muscles.
yep.
Can see them turn on. Yep.
Yeah, when you see it at the edge of the rib cage when the abdominal muscles are contracting,
Yep.
that some people think that's what lifts the back. It doesn't actually lift the back. It does tell you the core muscles are working. That's a good thing.
Hmm.
And it tells you like that engagement of the abdominal muscles is used to resist the back dropping. So
Yeah.
they're not strong enough to push the back up, the spine. But what they
Yeah.
do is they resist the downward direction of the spine. So
Yeah.
he's kind of starting to go, oh, I don't have to just drop my back all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can see how it's misunderstood as how they lift the back. I go, well, technically, it resists the downward direction of the spine, but it doesn't increase the upward direction of the spine. It only resists
Yeah.
the downward.
Yeah.
But I'm thrilled with this. And what you might play with too is because he's happier after you do your long rein work, you may take the girth or the bareback pad, maybe put it on and off. When you go to take it off at the end of the session, maybe
Okay. Yeah.
put it back on and try girthing after he's
Hmm.
worked. And then
Yeah.
also try grooming after he's worked, because I think his snarkiness with the grooming and the girth has more to do with his discomfort, or maybe
Yeah.
his memory of discomfort, but also maybe he still starts off his session. He's still slow enough and cautious enough that he's not comfortable yet. So
Hmm.
he would be more comfortable after you work him, probably be happier about being groomed or rinsed or having the girth put on. So you might play with that and
Yeah.
just see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be-
Yeah. Something else I'm very mindful of now. I think a lot of I mean, I know that he's had probably pain related behaviors in the past, but I think I've also added to the mix by being very defensive and reactive because he scared me, to be honest. He really
Oh,
did,
yeah.
or still does sometimes. But so I would overreact, tell him off. So it then just turns into a, bit of a, yeah, bit of a wheel, bit of a cycle. So now I'm very cautious to just be not react to anything he does, just kind of stay calm
Yep.
and push him out my way. And he's there. Yeah, it seems to be improving things, I think. So
Yeah.
I was added into the mix without a doubt.
And we do, because when a horse goes into the fight defense, um,
Hmm.
it's scary. It's aggression, right? Even if it's
Yeah.
mild, it's still aggression. And so it pushes our stress button, and
Hmm.
everybody's instinct when a horse comes at you fighting is to fight back.
Mm.
But all that does is escalate the stress, and
Yeah.
a lot of horses get better and better at fighting. And so
Mm.
they welcome it. They're like, bring it. And,
Yeah. Well, that's
know,
him,
yeah.
without a doubt. Yeah.
And so when you don't, like the whole strategy to counterbalance that fight defensive, because what it really is defensive aggression,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
defensive aggression. And so when we aggress back, we escalate it. But if we
Hmm.
hold, like my strategy is hold your ground whenever possible without
Hmm.
aggressing back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So staying calm, and if you have to get out of the way for safety purposes, get out of the way. But the more
Yeah.
you can push him away from you, or just it's not really, it's like you deflect an invasion,
Hmm.
but you
Mm.
don't go on the invasion yourself.
Yeah.
So you don't attack back, you don't aggress back, you don't even push back. You're only pushing to kind of deflect an invasion. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Protect your
think
circle.
it might be an interesting experiment, because the other thing with horses is if he had pain issues or a level of discomfort related to girthing and grooming, the memory for horses can be as real as the actual experience. And
Hmm.
so if you take the girth on and off at the end of your session and you play a little bit with grooming after you've worked him, it might be important for him to have a different experience with those things, because the only way you
Mm.
overcome the memory with horses is sort of at the scene of the crime, have a different experience, physical experience,
Yeah.
emotional
Yeah.
experience. And so you might only have to do it 2 or 3 times for him to go, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore. It's not
Hmm.
uncomfortable anymore. Where when you
Yeah.
do it before you work him, there may still be some discomfort muscularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you do it after you work him, the odds are better that it's not going to be muscularly uncomfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
he might have a different response to it.
Yeah.
But you're really mastering the long reins. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely get the feel of it now. And interestingly, like going the other direction, he goes better with me holding both reins quite firm.
Yes.
And if he goes to slow down, I kind of all I need to do is pull the inside rein a little bit, and it kind of seems to balance him out, and off we go again.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
this side's very different. This side, if I put too much pressure on either one, he stops. It feels like if I try to pull him into balance this direction, it's too much.
Yes. And so, and what you're feeling, what you're describing is when you go right, it's a little bit more of knocking the rust off the right hind leg. So it's a more mechanical issue that he has to
Yeah.
restore function when he's tracking right. It's more about
Hmm.
restoring the functional use of the hindquarter. When you're
Yeah.
tracking left, it's more of a stability issue. It's
Yes. Okay,
less,
that makes sense.
yeah, because you're
Yeah.
when you're tracking right, you're
Quite different.
asking for more work. You're asking for that right hind leg to really work. When you track
Hmm.
left, you're not asking the right hind leg to work nearly as hard, but he doesn't know how to stabilize going to the left. So the more support you give, if that helps them go forward, it's a stability issue, not a
Yeah. Yeah.
comfort issue, right? If
Yeah.
you give them more support and they lose forward, sometimes that's a comfort issue or a functional issue.
Hmm.
But you don't know until
Yeah.
you try. So I
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
he'll tell you, like you figured out it's different to the right than the left. And he's got lots of spots, lots of opinions. So he goes, I'll let you know.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And he really is, he's a different horse in that I don't see him protecting himself from you. I see him
No.
making a million mistakes in the learning process, but trusting your guidance, not fighting
Mm.
you, not resisting you, not uh, ignoring you. It's like I
Mm.
see he's making a lot of mistakes. This is hard for him. It's not easy yet, but
Yeah.
emotionally and mentally, he couldn't be trying any harder for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's working
Yeah.
it out.
I've stopped. I've decided not to use the whip, even though I've got it under my arm there. But the other day I thought I'll try to use the whip on him. Not obviously not
Yeah.
whacking him, but just tapping him. And it actually made him worse, as in I can get him going better if I get behind him and ask him to go forward. If I try to tap him with the whip, he's like, no, I'm not going.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
just, yeah,
I had a
yeah.
horse.
So,
It's what they're telling you when they get worse from the whip is I'm trying. Knock it off. I'm trying
yes,
as hard as I can. And
that's the vibe I get. He's like,
yeah.
I can't do it. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's like, quit criticizing me. I'm trying. Right. And
Yes.
I had
Yeah.
one horse who was so funny. If I pushed him a little with the whip and he was trying, he would take his hind leg while I was riding. He would take his hind leg and kick at me. And he very clearly like, I'm doing the best I can. Not,
Yeah. Yeah, I
quit
love it. Love
pressuring
it.
me. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and
And
that
it's
like
like it goes,
when you need
oh,
the
there you go.
whip, like when you were using the whip, if a horse is really shut down, really uncomfortable, really not knowing where we're going yet, you need the whip to get
Hmm.
them to try to just move. That, but it's
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that now instead of the whip being useful, it's almost giving you a different response that's worse. And that's
Yeah.
him That's him telling you, I'm on board with this. I want to work with you. I'm doing the best I can. So quit criticizing
Yeah.
me and pushing me. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, funny. Yeah.
he's a funny boy. He's very
He is a
clear,
funny boy.
which is good.
Mm.
It's like he doesn't hide his opinion, or it's like whatever's on his mind is very clearly demonstrated in his
Yeah,
choices.
it comes out.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a good thing. That's a emotionally healthy horse. Physically,
Yeah.
he struggles. That's why he got
Hmm.
labeled as a difficult horse is it wasn't it wasn't because he didn't like people or he wasn't trying. It was just unless somebody helped him with his body, nothing was going to work.
Yeah.
He just
Yeah.
couldn't get there.
Hmm.
And we don't even have to know why. I go, it, some horses,
Yeah.
they're just not athletically inclined like people, but
Mm.
we can train athletic ability in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
it. I
I
mean, I
mean,
know, we're not going to end up at Grand Prix dressage, but I'd be happy to do, you know, bush riding and maybe some working equitation or something. That's my
absolutely.
goal.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to have a healthy, safe
Yeah.
horse that you can
Yeah.
ride is,
Yeah. That's the
because
goal.
if you think back, I'm going to remind you, you weren't even sure he was fixable when we started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's very fixable. He's just a bit of a rehab project.
Yeah, he is. Yep.
Yeah.
And you get these things for a reason, don't you? You know, it all just is what it is.
I really
So,
think we do. I look back, where I used to feel so sorry for myself with all my difficulties. It was like every single horse that challenged me made me a better and better horse person. And
mm, yeah.
and really getting like the fact that you love this horse is what's motivating you to learn more to work through this.
Mm,
And
yeah.
that's how they make us better people is if we give up
Mm,
on them, we just don't learn anymore. Game over,
no,
right?
exactly. And like, what do you do? What do you do when you give up on him? Like, I couldn't sell him, like, and I
Right,
wouldn't, yeah. So,
right.
like, there's only one option. So,
Yeah,
this
and
is
you
what we're
go,
doing.
I mean, are you going to have a pasture ornament for 20 years, or
Yeah. Which
50?
he'd get worse, wouldn't he? He'd get narkier and,
Hmm.
you know, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's sort of, I think that love we have for the horse, or coming to a place where there's no other option, you may as well work them. It's
Hmm.
it takes us on a journey that is it's just incredible.
Hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
learning process that you don't see out there very often because most of the normal human traditional stuff most horses cope with.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's why I really like the ones that get labeled as difficult because you now have to change how you train.
Yeah, yeah. And he just wasn't the kind of horse just to accept it.
Nope.
So, yeah, which
No,
is good.
and
Otherwise he would have probably broken, well, he was already broken down, but as in broken down worse, wouldn't have he? If he carried on, trying to work dysfunctionally and whatnot. And yeah, I'm sure he probably
well,
would have.
horses always go one of two ways. When we don't get the training right for the horse, they go one of two ways, and you have one of each. Pablo had just the personality or maybe a level of discomfort that before he really showed lameness, he was going to become dangerous.
Hmm.
So they become a behavioral problem because they're screaming at us that the training isn't working for them.
Yeah.
And those are the
Yeah.
ones that either have the energy or the drive or the sense of self-preservation that you have a behavioral issue, but you don't necessarily have a lameness issue. Stitch, on the other hand, he was a little bit of a behavioral issue, but not like Pablo. And what
Hmm.
he was doing was giving it his best as long as he could until he had a pain issue, kissing spine and
Yeah.
now laminitis, right? And so
Yeah.
it was like his body got pushed farther than
Yeah.
Pablo's did
Yeah.
because he was more willing or acquiesced to what humans
Hmm.
wanted. But if it's
Hmm.
not working for a horse, you start to get safety issues regarding behavior, or you get
Yeah.
lameness issues. I go,
Yeah.
you get one of the two. And it just
Hmm.
depends on the personality of the horse, which way they're going to go. But neither one, you have an unusable horse either way.
Yeah. 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 I've got two unusable horses.
No, Pablo's,
Actually, three. There's an Arab in the paddock as well, so he's retired.
uh,
Yeah.
no, but just the work you're doing and the fact that you're willing to do it from the ground is it's you are rebuilding your horses. It's like taking
Mm.
an old house and fixing it up. And it's
Yeah.
not the easiest process, especially the first time through. But
Hmm.
everything you're learning in the process makes you a better rider and a better horse person. And you're doing
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Uh, yeah, because
I'm
managing the
happy with our
mulnines is not
progress.
easy. What's that?
No, I said no, I'm happy with our progress.
Yeah.
It's been a slow road, but I definitely see progress. So, we're keeping at it.
But even your decisions, like when we're not talking and having lessons, it's like you figured out these different things you could do. Like
Mm.
your intuition, you're reading your horses better and you're experimenting, and your intuition is
Hmm.
guiding the girthing or the grooming or how to handle them in the paddocks. And so that's
Yeah.
all part of the big picture too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, he has to go visiting your friend. Okay, I better wrap it up.
Yeah.
I
My
know we've,
daughter's standing there with an apple, so
oh,
he thinks it's for
derail.
him.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
derail. Any final questions?
No, all good, thank you.
The
I
fact that
shall carry on carrying on and
the fact
yeah.
that he didn't shut down to the point that you had to use the whip just to get him to move on a circle is really impressive for Pablo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah,
And
we're
I
getting there.
good progress from the last video too.
Ah, good, good. Thank you. Thank you. Onward and up, hey?
Absolutely. And you will hit a point, I can't tell you when, where it's like slog, slog, slog for inches of progress and improvement, and then it starts to
Hmm.
pick up momentum. His body will hit
Yeah.
a certain point in the coordination where everything starts to
Hmm.
move faster. And I think you're getting
Yeah.
close. You're
Yeah.
getting close.
Yeah. 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 Good-o.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I
All
will
right.
see you in a fortnight time, huh?
That sounds good.